Well, hello, this is Dr. Lemmon, and I'm doing an introduction to my February blog. So we'd like to do these little talks to kind of go through the highlights of what we're doing. This is 2022, so we had decided, I just went on and on last year trying to figure out where to put our emphasis in 2022 to start to implement changes. You have noticed that there's changes going on, not only climate changes, political changes, all kinds of changes in the world going on, health changes, most certainly, all this craziness, whether, no matter what you think, it's not a question. It's the fact that we're so polarized. It tells you that all of a sudden there's not a congruent platform. There's nothing that we can all agree on, right? It's not that we should ever all agree, because differentiation between people is what produces innovation. We come up with new ideas, and we should always have a certain amount of that. But when a conflict gets to the point where we can't talk, then we have a huge problem. So we're really now saying, okay, how do we get past this? And so I'm saying we need to get diversified. If you're an absolute expert in something, you know everything about the field, that's really, really good until somebody knows more than you, and then you're not so much the expert, or till the whole field changes. Right now, in an evolutionary place, all the fields are changing. So if you're an expert, you're yesterday's news. But what we have found in sports and lots of other fields in business too, is that the more diversity someone has, the more able they are to make those adaptations, to make those changes. So we really want to build up more ranges, more diversity. That's what we're trying to do. Get some more range, get some more diversity. How you do that is not by looking at all the things that are associated with what you do, because that all comes into the same pattern. It's all pattern driven. So when that pattern starts to fall apart, Moore's law was a rule until it wasn't a rule anymore, right? Back in the 60s somewhere, Moore came to with an idea that all this stuff in technology is going to double, right? So now today it's not doubling anymore, right? And what we ran up into, we ran up against a wall. I've now got stuff so small we can't. It's getting very, very expensive to do microprocessors and many stuff. And the other end of it is that we've been able to produce some substandard stuff. In other words, very efficient, quick stuff. You buy things today with a little electric panels and boards in it, and it's kind of like Russian roulette. Maybe like 85, 90% of them work. You look at reviews, and there's always 5 to 10% that's just like, I plugged it in, it didn't even come on, it didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And that's just the pattern that we see coming forth, because of the fact that as the diversity went out, the people stepping up didn't have the expertise. We need to have a broader scope. So when I say find a topic you don't know very much about, last year I bought my wife for her birthday a crossbow. So we're going to go out and we'll play this year with a crossbow, right? I had a crossbow for a day once when I was in my late 20s. I shot a little bit of archery when I was maybe 14 or 15. I don't really know very much about it. So I bought some targets. We're going to go out in the woods somewhere this year when the weather gets nice and practice with a crossbow. Do I really want to get good at it? Well, probably not. I'm not sure that, I could really be carrying around in my car. But for the most part, it's just fun. It just gives you diversity. The more diverse you have, the more spread out it is, the more that you can build on all of that, right? We need a better foundation, lots of diversity. Find a book, look at movies, go to some type of a talk. Most certainly, we're living in the Northwest, and up here the colleges like to have a lot of talks in basically the at different pubs. So we used to be able to go to a pub and there'd be a science talk at a pub. You could go in, you could buy a beer, you could get some food, and you could listen to somebody talk about a science topic. It was really, really cool until COVID came along. And now they're all Zoom meetings. And it's kind of like, wow, I enjoyed the talks. I'd always gone to science talks because I'm an academic. I've got a couple of degrees, so I went to science talks. And I'd always go into them. And these pub talks, all of a sudden, were really a lot of fun. They were really kind of a combination between science and social. They were very interesting. And now, if I go into the Zoom talks, it's like, number one, it's so structured and academic without an audience there. It's just very cold. And they're sitting there talking. And now it's all this emphasis to be politically correct. I'm not saying we shouldn't be politically correct. I'm not in favor of any of the issues that we're fighting with, but they're all polarized pieces. So in the talk, they spend the first half hour trying to justify all the polarized pieces. And it's kind of like, by the time you guys get around to talking to the topic, we put everybody to sleep because all of a sudden we're not stirring the pot anymore. I'm used to having a playful batter with someone, arguing with someone. When I first started teaching everybody, he said, I'm so irreverent. I'm very irreverent. I could not teach today because most certainly people would be suing me or upset with me or all the above, right? Because I like to stir the pot. I like to agitate someone. I like to be able to challenge them a little bit without insulting them. And now today, challenging someone is an insult. I had a lady in a meeting one time. I said, you could do more. And she said, well, it feels like you're attacking me. I said, did you want a compliment that said, wow, you just do a wonderful job? And does that inspire you to do more? Or do I tell you that you are doing a good job and you should spend time to see how you could have a bigger influence with the expertise that you develop? And so that's an attack. And she goes, well, not when you put it that way. I said, okay. So I said, so let's have a discussion. Tell me what ideas you have. I asked you how you could improve what you were doing. And then you said that felt like an attack. We're just looking for diversity. We're looking for different ways to do things. I get books on topics I know nothing about, and I read it, and sometimes I'm looking at saying, oh my gosh, this is horrible, right? I go through cookbooks. I type up recipes. I amend them. I try to make something new once a month, right? My wife likes to cook. I like to cook. We spend a lot of time at home. We buy things. We make different recipes. Food in the restaurants, I've noticed over the last 20 years or so, the quality of the raw materials has dropped tremendously. I mean, I go into a restaurant today and order a side of a side vegetable like broccoli or something on the side, and it comes out in kind of a mush that they've kind of boiled to death. And it's like, oh my gosh, there was not enough diversity in what they're doing. So everything that's on the fringe is just put together haphazardly. We need to have lots more diversity. I look at young people I'm talking to. I've got people in the neighborhood, and the guy next door said, when you're working on a project, let me know because I can come over and watch because I need to learn some things. And so one day I knocked on his door and said, I'm fixing a fence today. If you want to come over and watch. He said, oh, I'll be over in a little bit. He never showed up. And then I asked him, he said, oh, I was watching something on TV. It's his day off. It's his day off. And he gets up in the morning and he sits in front of the television all day long. Like, wow. And I asked him what he was watching and he couldn't remember what he was watching. So, but there was no interaction. There was no, what we used to call learning. There was like, you didn't walk away with an inspiration. You didn't walk away saying, wow, we got to get that wow back into life. We got to say, wow, I just learned to do something. I don't want to do that for a living, but and now I know at least a little bit about it, right? It's just, and that's what I've been looking, I have so many different projects laying around in here in my office, which is why I have to have an artificial background because I've got so much junk sitting around here. That's projects that don't sit for years, that have only been sitting for maybe 4 or 5 months, but I'm doing research on them. And I don't know which one is going to have an answer first. So I've got parts sitting all over the place, right? I've got stuff, I've got parts over here for a project I started, and then I'm in the midst of it. And then my wife comes along and said, oh, let's do it this way. Well, I go, okay. Now you've just thrown a little spin into it. That's good. I'm ready for that. Let's sit with that a little bit and see how much more we want to put into this and where we want to go with it, what we want to do with it, right? Does that make sense? That's diversity. That expands it out. You got to use this a little bit. You got to attend to it for a little bit. I have things sitting here because I got to think about them. I've got tablets. I got scraps of paper around that are attached to them, taped on top of it. It's like, there's a couple new ideas I got to research when all of a sudden I've got nothing else to do and I get on the computer at night and look up different avenues and different things I can do with it, different lighting systems, different, all those things to me are fun. They're interesting. They're diverse. I most certainly wouldn't want to do any of them for a living. They're way too much work, but they're fun to do. Yes, I could go out and hire someone to come do it, but I don't want to do that. That's not much fun. I mean, it's like, why do I do that? And all of a sudden, it doesn't make any sense. If I'm not vested in it, then all of a sudden 2 or 3 years from now, it's like, I've been looking at lighting systems and what do I find? I find that when I look at them, it looks like transformers last maybe a couple of years. So do I want to go buy an expensive transformer to put out LED lights in my backyard? Or do I want to just get a cheap one that every couple of years I'm changing? So that means I want to get one that is simple to mount and unmount, right? I didn't go going in the front door. When I went in the front door, I was looking for the kind of the cool looking one that I can build into the wall and mount it down and have it come out and look nice and finished. And now I start to realize that is going to be a real pain in the butt, taking that off and remounting it if they only last a couple of years. Right? So it takes a little time for all this stuff to expose itself. So I could go on forever, and I know I do. So I'm going to cut it right here. This is February. We're just really kind of launching an idea. I'm right now working on March's blog, and probably April's blog is somewhere in the back of my brain, kind of churning around. Really want to see if we can get some activity going today and get some diversity. So look around a little bit. Don't just go look at a YouTube video. Go ahead and dig a little deeper into it. Find a topic that interests you. Get the book on it. Read a little bit on it, or look for some other material by that person. Look if the presentation is showing you a potential or just an idea, right? Fantasies are a wonderful thing, but we're really looking for diversity and ideas, right? So have a little bit of both, right? I read a couple of science books, and I read some fiction books, then I read maybe some travel books, not that we can travel at this point, but you know, it's just diversity. All right. So having said that, this is Dr. Chris Lemmon, and I most certainly respond to questions. So go ahead and email me, chris@wizardscatch.com, with any questions you have about anything I say or anything in the world going on. That's WIZARDSCACHE. Okay. And thank you very much. So enjoy the blog. All right. There we go. I found the button. It's so complicated.